So, do you think this will really change the success of the wrestler having the insole in the shoe? Do you think that would impact their performance?
I do,
Hi,
100%.
I'm Dr. Jim Clough. We're on the Power of Your Feet podcast today. Today we're talking with Adam Visconti. Adam and I have known each other for about 3.5 years. Adam has a pretty solid background in wrestling, and it was through Adam that we really started to check athletes and discover that their balance and strength was improving with the Cluffy insole. So that all came about after we had a discussion when we were elk hunting. So anyway, welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Yeah, Dr. Coates, thanks for having me on. Definitely excited to chat with you today.
Yeah. So Adam has been a wrestler for a number of years. In high school, he was a Colorado wrestler. He placed 4 times for the state meet. He was a 3-time placer and 2-time finalist in the state. Then he went to Colorado Mesa University and wrestled varsity for 4 years. And so, Adam, you're now coaching in Montana.
Yep.
And what are you coaching here?
Yeah. So currently, helping out with a couple different programs. A high school program, just south of Missoula here, Stevensville High School. And then we've got a club that we started, about a year and a half ago. Really, we're not set on ages. We've got, 4 or 5-year-olds all the way up through high school coming in there and rolling. So it's kind of fun to get a good mix of ages in there. But that's steadily been growing. I think it's we kind of picked a town that maybe had lost a little bit of traction or experience for that wrestling group or some of those younger kids. So that's what I've been doing the last 2 years. Kind of prior to that, I was traveling with the Brazilian freestyle team too. Had the chance to do some international coaching with them. So that was 23 and then beginning of 24. Went over there a number of times, a couple different countries, and that was a good time. But definitely has helped me bring that experience back and, help kind of coach these younger kids down here. We've got a really good talent pool in Montana, so it's been fun to be a part of that.
So, Adam, when did we first try the Cluffy insoles with you, and what was your initial impression of that?
I think originally, I think I threw them in my running shoes to start. And I think that's I had started to do some miles running, and I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I've been wrestling since I was 5 years old. You kind of went through that introduction, but wrestling since I was 5 years old, played a couple different sports, always been active, but running was definitely something that I never took the time to do and honestly kind of despised growing up and training. Started getting into running and, kind of just different exercises. And I think, initially I was having some different foot pain and things like that. And I think that's when I first came to you, started looking at different offerings that you guys had worked on and come around. And I think that's when the discussion started initially with looking at that, for wrestling. So yeah, I think that was kind of the start there.
Okay. So you are also a runner, right? You're doing some long distance running right now and some marathons and some you're training for a Ironman, full Ironman event.
Correct. Yeah, and I started with the Spartan races. Did quite a few of those Spartan races when they were up here locally in Montana. Kind of from that, took a step up and started doing some like half marathons, some shorter distances. And then early last year, I did the 70.3, so the half Ironman. That was down there in Galveston, Texas. That was fun to train for, running being new to me, but also the swimming and biking was new to me, so kind of getting all 3 avenues there. About a month and a half after that, I did my first full marathon. Again, that was local here in Montana, so I did the Missoula Marathon. That was a great experience. And yeah, just looking to kind of steadily grow on that. Kind of the next step for me is that full Ironman. So looking at Sacramento in October of this year. And I'll definitely have some smaller events, prior to that. Would like to get another marathon in, possibly a biathlon somewhere.
So Adam, with your running, I think you've had some injuries. I'm aware of some Achilles tendon issues you've had in the past and maybe some other injuries. Have you had any experience with the Cluffy insole as far as recovering from those injuries or preventing them? What has been your understanding about how they may have benefited you there?
Yeah, great question. And I think that kind of takes us back to when we originally, you originally kind of got me in a pair of them. I coming out of high school and college, I think I fractured my left ankle two times that I got x-rays on, but possibly another one. Rolled it a couple times, so I think it's just been banged up over the years. And you can even see it kind of kicks out on me a little bit sometimes, but had some really bad Achilles pain, especially when I first started running and started to add distance, even to the point that I think, you probably saw me limping a decent bit there. But I remember kind of night and day, throwing that in there and then continuing on my same running pattern. It was, very quick within the first 2 weeks of me running in that. I mean, that whole thing had kind of subsided. That swelling was gone. I wasn't having those big aching days, and it was literally putting me almost out of work to flare up like that. I mean, it would get so tight that I couldn't even walk. And I really think, to be honest, I don't think I would have ever been able to hit the distances that I have or I'm looking to do without that change there. And not even just wrestling, I think, or running. I used to notice it a lot while wrestling and training. Even that Achilles, I don't think I really understood how tight or damaged I may have had that throughout my years competing. But switching that and then adding that to my wrestling shoe as well, it's really almost come to the point that I don't notice it anymore. It's something that I lived with for 4, 5, 6, 7 years and would constantly be kind of going back through the recovery stage, every couple months. I feel like it was almost quarterly. Quarterly, it would flare up on me, and I was down for 2 or 3 weeks. So that I have not had a flare up, kind of knock on wood here, but I
Hmm.
have not had a flare up in over 18 months. And I've probably put in twice as much work as I have, the rest of my career. So,
Good to hear. So with
yeah.
wrestling, what do you think the main advantage with the insult is with the wrestling?
Yeah, I get excited talking about just seeing that with wrestling. As I've stayed very close to the sport, looking at coaching, and I think, post competing, after my competing days are over, I've become even more of a student of the sport. I just enjoy it. I enjoy watching it, enjoy learning about it. One thing that I've always noticed is that there's not a lot of offerings gear wise, like it's kind of been overlooked. And I think I remember the first time showing you my wrestling shoe, which was a higher end wrestling shoe, and the insole that was in it, and it just like kind of clicked when I had seen it and stepped in it and started using it for running. I was like, man, this is, just a huge avenue that we've missed. But specifically looking at the benefits of it, I would say the stability gained, right? The one thing with wrestlers that I see, my opinion is that being stable and balanced is so important. And you watch the top tier guys, the Division 1 athletes, the international athletes. The one thing that they all have, kind of the symmetry for all of them, is they have phenomenal balance and they're very grounded. And I remember when we first started doing the testing, that was the first two things that I wrote down on that paper. People go years and years training that and trying to find that. And if you can have something that supplements to that, right, that's a huge benefit for everybody.
Hmm. Very good. Do you think that the balance is going to tie in with injury prevention? Do you think that would make them less likely to become injured?
I do. I do. Absolutely. Most common injuries that you see in wrestling, knees, elbows, shoulders. Shoulders are a big one, right? But when does that stuff happen? Big falls, slams, things like that. If you're able to move more appropriately and ground yourself more appropriately, I can only see that lowering the chances of those injuries coming through. So, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. So, do you think this will really change the success of the wrestler having the insole in the shoe? Do you think that would impact their performance?
I do 100% wholeheartedly. And I guess really where that my support for that comes is throughout my time coaching and, as we've kind of looked at this, I obviously got super excited about it right off the bat. But I have had a lot of peers use these, friends, Bruno that I coached internationally, world team member for Brazil, Gustavo, another guy out there that was on the Greco world team. Everybody has said pretty much the same thing, phenomenal experience that they don't want to wrestle without him. I've got even guys here in Montana that were college wrestlers that are back competing, going to US Opens and stuff like that, that just swear by him now. So 100%. It's exciting for me to see, and I think that we go through the testing and you see the results, and I'm like, man, the first thing that kind of triggered for me is I need to get my kids in these, and see the benefits. But as my peers start getting in them, and everything that they say kind of lines up with what I'm saying with how we're feeling in the insole. So
Yeah.
100%, I think it's going to add to what you're able to do in certain positions. Wrestling is a very dynamic sport. Anybody that's done it or, been around the sport knows it's not just one avenue. You can't just be strong. You can't just be flexible. You can't just be, or have good technique. It's kind of a combination of things. But what all those things balance on is your stability, your balance, your groundedness, right? Nothing works without that. So I kind of see that as being a core thing. And yeah, 100%.
Okay, good. So if you're talking to somebody that is struggling with their game, you'd recommend the insole. What would you tell them about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Would absolutely recommend the insole. I would say get in there, let it adjust to your shoe, get moving around on it, and really is, you're going to feel it. I don't know what I would tell them specifically, about it other than, trust the process. And I think that you're going to feel the difference, I really do.
And you've been involved with some of the testing, and in the testing, we've seen some pretty significant gains. So you help with a lot of that with your club wrestlers. And I think we've figured out it was taking about 31% more force to pull them forward on that hand fighting position. Their knee was about 28, 29% more stable, and their side to side balance was about 29% more stable as well. These are all measured with a dynamometer, right? So we could objectively quantify the amount of force necessary to push them off balance. So those are fairly significant numbers, right? That it would really change things for most wrestlers.
Huge numbers, huge numbers. And the first time prior to us doing any specific testing, I remember just putting him in the shoes and, we just wrestled for about an hour, hour and a half. It was actually with one of my college peers. I Trigstad wrestled with him in college, and we both threw him in and we wrestled, drilled at first and then wrestled some live. And it was phenomenal to see, like, feel that difference. But then when you put a number to it, right, it just shows you how significant that really is. And you in your head, you're like, you can feel it, but you throw a number on there, and it really does change everything. Coming from a coaching standpoint, like if I can if I could teach somebody how to be 30% more stable in a year, I've done way more than my job. But to be able to find that value from, a product and the stability that you're adding to their wrestling shoe, yeah, phenomenal.
Very good. Well, Adam, we appreciate you being with us today. Thank you very much for your time, and wish you well in your training for the Ironman and
Yeah,
for your upcoming wrestling meet at the Montana Open, too.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I failed to mention that coming out of retirement for one. So yeah, next week we got the Montana Open. There'll actually be a couple of us in the insole wrestling there. So I think we got a total of four that are going over and wrestling in those.
Gonna have some tough
So yeah,
competition.
yeah, I know it. I know it. We're gonna be ready to go. We've got practice here in about an hour and a half.
Good deal. Very
Yeah, no,
good.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Definitely something I've been excited to see and see you share with the world. I
Mhm.
love seeing the improvement of the sport. I think that the sport's seen a lot more traction in the last 3 to 4 years than I've seen my entire career, or life growing up. It really is starting to get the traffic and the attention. And the one thing that we haven't had is supplemental gear to the sport, really, outside
Yeah.
of maybe an e-pad. And I just think that you find something that can help you that much, benefits. It's been really cool to be a part of and see.
It's really cool to see how the women are grabbing hold of this sport.
I know.
They're doing
Yeah,
well.
Montana's kind of leading the pack in that. They've got some phenomenal women wrestlers, female
Mhm.
wrestlers, traveling across the U.S., getting college scholarships, and
Mhm.
it's been really cool to see. Yeah, they have phenomenal
Yeah.
scholarship opportunities at all these big universities now.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, from the year that I came up, so it was 2021 that I came to Montana, to now, I think that the overall female participation has gone up about 7 times, is what I heard. So,
Wow.
7 times the amount,
That's
which
amazing.
it is
That's
amazing. It is amazing.
rapid
And you
growth.
can see the talent pool just growing with that, It's
Yeah.
been fun. It's been really
That's
fun.
very good. Okay, we'll conclude there.